All right, Greg. It's Thursday, not Tuesday. What happened this
What?
week?
Gee,
I
my
you
whole
slept
week's
right.
going
You slept right through it, didn't you?
on.
Uh,
Yes, we had a little bit of a scheduling snafu, so here we are on Thursday.
that's okay. As long as we get our podcast in, I'm happy.
That's correct. Absolutely. We wouldn't go a week with missing one.
No, no. So how was your week anyway?
It was good. Yeah, it's been real good. Thank you for asking. Yeah.
No problem.
How
Yeah,
about you?
it's been very busy, which is a good thing.
Yeah,
And you know, one day goes into the next. Before I know it, it's next week.
I know. I
As
know. Like here you said, here it is, end of the day Thursday already, and we're looking at the weekend almost. So
we're pushing another weekend.
yeah,
Yeah. So as we go into this new week and new discussion, um, let's focus in on something that came across my desk that I shared with you recently, which
yeah,
is, you know, is experience overrated in entrepreneurship? Is a beginner's mindset an advantage or a disadvantage? Or is there a happy medium? I'm not sure, but I figured let's discuss it and see where we both come from in terms of perspective. So, what do you think?
yeah. I think as I look back, there on my career, my experience, certainly experience was given a lot of weight, right? For somebody going into business, having an experience in the business that they're going into was it was almost like it was just, yeah, why would you go into any other business other than one that you know, right? Um, what I like about this topic though is I think, and I've seen it with business owners who have owned their business for a long time or been in their business for a long time, they have a hard time getting out of that that condition where they feel like they know the business so well that they really can't look at it objectively anymore. They're in its, and it comes from a standpoint sometimes of many, many years ago, right? And they're still trying to project what they knew then as what it is today. And I think that's where there's a real benefit to a business owner who doesn't bring, I'll call it baggage in this case, um, and it really comes into their business with an open mind.
And that requires coming out of an environment where you haven't been there long enough to be jaded. If you've worked for somebody long enough and you've experienced different bosses or managers, you get a sense of what it looks like. What does a boss look like? What does
Yeah,
he or she sound like? How do they operate? And if you've worked in enough places, you get to experience different people. But it's kind of hard to, if you decide that, okay, I'm leaving my job and I want to go into business, can I leave behind completely what I've learned and come in with a fresh approach to entrepreneurship?
yeah, I'd say it's pretty difficult to forget things we've learned because it just becomes a part of us. It almost becomes innate in us, right? It doesn't mean we can't come into an entrepreneurial situation with an open mind,
Yeah.
but it means we maybe need to be a little more forward thinking about that and really being conscious about the fact that, yes, I'm bringing a lot of experience with me, but I need to make sure I'm looking at things with kind of a clean slate and not letting those experiences negatively taint my opinion of this business or making assumptions that aren't really valid anymore.
Yeah. Well, again, and this is what comes from, if you spend too much time as an employee and then you want to go into business, you've had so many years of experience and you come to entrepreneurship with a preconceived notion, okay,
Mhm.
this is how I'm going to act, because you really don't know anything as an entrepreneur, because an entrepreneur's mindset, an owner's mindset is not the same as an employee's mindset.
Right. We've
So it's
talked
like,
about that before. Yeah.
yeah, so how do I bring that, um or let go of the things that I've learned through the years? And I would venture to say you don't need to let it go. You need to basically still look back to see what you liked and didn't like, and then bring a fresh perspective to it.
Yeah. I think that's a really, really well said, that maintaining that fresh perspective is really important, that we should never get kind of caught up in thinking we've got all the answers, or thinking that, uh, oh, I've seen this situation before. And there's nothing wrong with that. But again, I think looking at it through a different lens, right? A different perspective, as opposed to that one that, if we look at it through our experience perspective, we might get a jaded result. We might jump to, I think the biggest thing is we jump to conclusions that we really haven't really thought through thoroughly. I've had some clients who, again, really feel like they know the business so well that they're not challenging themselves as to how things are changing in the environment, in their business. And I think in this day and age, it's just so important to really push yourself to say, hey, what am I missing? Or what's changing? What's the difference between my client today and my client of 10 or 15 years ago? And really start asking those questions and saying, okay, if my client's changing, am I changing? Am I adapting? Or am I still treating that customer like he was the customer I had 15 years ago?
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, I'm an experienced entrepreneur, you
Mhm.
know, and the first time you take that jump, that leap into entrepreneurship, you really don't have any preconceived notions about entrepreneurship. You may have thoughts about what a boss that you've experienced does, or does that you don't like,
Yeah,
how operations work, accounting, things like that. But a first time entrepreneur is like a new baby. It's like they don't have any of those, you know, negative thoughts, that if you've had a failure, you became an entrepreneur the first time, you opened up a restaurant, it failed. Okay. But true entrepreneurship really, uh, comes from failure not being the end, that it's the beginning of
right.
success.
Yeah,
And it's,
yeah,
it's a very hard concept to grasp, because a lot of people, when they fail, oh, that's it, I'm done.
right.
I tried it, didn't work, no good.
Yeah,
That's not what entrepreneurship is all about. It's about, the willingness to take a risk, okay, and knowing that you may fail, and then also accepting you don't know everything. You just don't.
right. Right. We've talked before about failing forward, and
Yeah, yeah,
making sure that when you do fail, you're learning from it, you're growing.
yes.
And and like you just said, you can't, uh, as an effective entrepreneur, you can't fail once and quit. You got to get back up, dust yourself off, figure out what went wrong, do some analysis, be introspective, but don't give up, right? Don't give up.
Never give up.
No.
Never. Now, when I say never give up, okay, there's two types of giving up. You could give up on the particular business opportunity, okay,
Mhm.
because it just didn't work.
No.
The overhead was too high, you didn't have enough cash. But that's giving up in a way that's strategic, okay?
Yeah,
You've taken, every aspect, you've looked at it, you said, okay, this is not going to work for the following reasons. But now what do you do with that? Okay, now my next venture, whether it's going to be now or 5 years from now, I know that I'm going to need more cash if I choose to stay in this industry. So maybe I take a part where before I just did it on my own. So your decision making in round two of entrepreneurship is at least based on some learned experience.
Yeah, I would call that a pivot, Keith.
Yeah.
I would say, that's a pivot where you say, you know what? It wasn't working this way. So now I'm going to change something. And maybe it's a small change, maybe it's a drastic change. Like I think you were just referring to a drastic change where somebody says, you know what? I'm in the wrong business. I need to pivot to something else. Maybe it's something close by, or maybe it's something completely different. But either way, it's really taking that fresh perspective and really doing some introspection in terms of where you're at with your business and where where you want to get to. And sometimes it means kind of, I don't want to say throwing the towel, because that sounds like quitting. I'm talking about pivoting into something different.
So, again, so you evaluate the situation, you determine, okay, I've made a decision, I'm closing the doors, end of this game, but not end of my life as an entrepreneur. If you truly want to control your own destiny in the world of entrepreneurship, you say, okay, this was a learning experience. Was it costly? Yes, it was costly. But my chances for success in round two are far greater.
Right. Because of what I've learned. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just you can't learn something that you don't know what you need to learn. You learn the basics, how to do basic accounting, managing people, things like that. But even managing people, when I think back to my experience of how I managed people 40 years ago as compared to the way I manage people today, it's like night and day.
Yeah.
I have so much more compassion for people that, may not succeed or may not do as good a job as I expect. But I understand that, there's much more to, the relationship part of this. Because people aren't going to perform well if you're constantly negative and on their ass.
But that's one of the things I think we've seen change with regard to leadership over the years. Is leadership really used to be sort of this top-down mentality. I'll tell you what to do, you'll do it, right? As opposed to today, businesses are so much more collaborative, right? They're working in teams. They're making sure that, like you said, that employees have some mental wealth in their jobs, in their companies, in their culture. It's just changed so much. But if you're a leader, an entrepreneur, and you're still acting the way you did, like you just said back when you first started, you'd be missing the boat. I mean, who would want to work for you if you acted like that? I mean, people just don't put up with it
Want to
anymore.
work for me either. I think back to it, it's like, but there's a level of maturity. My first business, let's see, was 42 years ago, which means I was 25.
Mhm.
Okay, I was a kid.
Yeah,
Literally at 25. I mean, even though you're an adult, but your level of maturity is really not there yet.
right.
So,
Well, and I think I think one of the challenges for young entrepreneurs is to recognize that they don't have to put on this, kind of this mask of, hey, I know everything, I have all the answers, right? I'm the boss. I think a good young business owner and an old business owner is much more open to input, feedback, constructive criticism, whether it's from customers, employees, stakeholders, whoever it is, and taking that and using it as opposed to just brushing it off or ignoring it or becoming defensive, but really taking that feedback and saying, okay, how am I going to change? How's my organization going to change because of what I'm hearing?
when I think back on all the different things that I've done in my career, the one place that even when I was young that I was mature ahead of my time was in how to deal with customers. There was something innate in me that just understood who's paying my bills.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of entrepreneurs lose sight of that when they get into a situation of customer care and selling and being successful is, they think they're doing somebody a favor, that they're doing business with them. No, you're not.
Right.
This is your job is to, serve them.
I think that's where that, when we started this discussion talking about experience versus inexperience, right? And I think that is the one advantage sometimes that a young entrepreneur has is if they come into a situation, right, they haven't been an entrepreneur before, so they're new to that. If a lot of times when we're new to something, we're more open-minded, right? Because we understand we don't have all the answers. So what a great opportunity as a young entrepreneur to really be open-minded and to really take that feedback, take that criticism, whether it's from a client, again, an employee, and really say, like you just said, I mean, you turned it around and said, hey, what is that customer telling me and how do I need to change? As opposed to hearing that and saying, I don't want that person as a customer anyway. I mean,
so it's interesting. There's two things that happen when someone is inexperienced versus experienced as an entrepreneur. An experienced entrepreneur that has some failures under their belt may become too afraid to make decisions. Okay, so that's the negative aspect, because everybody reacts differently to failure and pressure. With someone who hasn't failed yet, is sort of like a free spirit, like, yeah, what the hell, let me try this, let me try that, and and that could be good and bad, but the good part is that your mind is fully open to almost anything. You're really open to ideas, thoughts. You may have a conversation with your dad, a friend, a mentor, and you get all excited and say, wow, I have a new idea of how I can make an old idea fresh, new. That's what entrepreneurship is all about, finding like, there's very few brand new ideas.
right.
Almost everything is an innovation off of something that was there before.
Right. It's just been tweaked a little bit.
Well, tweaked and sometimes much more than tweaked. The iPhone was the
Right.
So I mean, there are things that smartphones revolutionized how we live.
So think about that for a minute. You said an iPhone, right, as being very innovative, and yet we've had phones for hundreds of years, right?
Correct.
Now, I'm not saying the iPhone isn't innovative, but it's taking the idea, a telephone, and miniaturizing it and cutting the wire, right?
Yeah.
So
That's so true. That's so true. And which really goes back to my initial comment, which is that there's truly very little brand new ideas. There's a reinvention of an old idea.
yeah.
So,
Or there's taking an idea and taking it to the next level, the next level, the next level, right? Keith, one more thing on this whole topic that I find really interesting is I think a lot of times entrepreneurs tend to want to surround themselves with folks who think like they do. And that lends and leads to, again, sort of this groupthink. Everybody's got the same perspective. So everybody thinks, when there's a decision to be made, everybody's looking at it the same way because they've all got the same background. I really encourage my clients when they're looking to build their team to be open to hiring some folks who don't have the same background. They don't have the industry background. I get so frustrated because every time I read classified ads for jobs, they're always asking for experience in the industry that the business is in. And I always think, no, you've already got plenty of people there who understand the industry. Bring somebody from outside that industry to bring new and fresh ideas in.
That's really, look, outside the box thinking is a term you've heard probably hundreds of times in your career.
Yeah.
It really is important, especially for entrepreneurs, to be willing to allow somebody to come in and give a fresh view, and part of the problem, and I suffered from this a lot, is ego. Ego gets in the way of, like, you want to be the person who gets, all the credit, that everyone says you built this great company, and it really doesn't matter. I mean, I'm talking 40 years later, but it doesn't,
Right.
because what's the most important thing? That you've built something that's been successful. Nobody built something successful on their own. It doesn't happen that way. You look at any industry, the most successful people surrounded themselves with very smart people, in many cases smarter than them.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the only way you can build a business that's gonna be there for the long haul. If you're surrounding yourself with yes people, or folks who aren't up to challenging you as the business leader, I think the business only goes so as far as you, the business owner, can take it, versus if you build a diverse team around you, now that business can go further than just where you can take it, because you've got now all these other strong resources around you who can help build the business, grow the business, pivot in the business. So I think that's really, really critical for, again, entrepreneurs, when they're at that point where they're building a team, to think about the type of people they're hiring and their backgrounds, and making sure they are getting some diversity. And I don't mean hiring people who aren't qualified for the job. I mean people who come from different backgrounds, different industries.
Yeah, I mean fresh perspectives, because
Yeah.
again, it goes back to, are you willing to allow other people to bring something to the table that you didn't even think about? I mean, sometimes someone says something and it's like, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
You're on the inside looking out, and someone's on the outside looking in, and they go, I see something here that you may be missing.
Well, and I think, Keith, you and I as coaches, I think that's one thing we bring to the table as well. Where a business owner, again, and their team might have a perspective that maybe was true at one time, but they all have that same perspective. You bring in a trusted advisor, a coach, somebody to help them look at things differently. I think you can really open up a world of possibilities.
No question. So, some of the most famous people in the world, jumped in without experience. Elon Musk, he had no prior experience in automotive or aerospace. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
I mean, he was willing to take and question established methods and challenge the status quo.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really what it, so go ahead, I'm sorry.
He owns a company like Tesla, but he probably couldn't get hired as an employee there.
No, he probably couldn't. Well, that's the interesting part also about entrepreneurs in general. We are generally risk takers. We're not easy to control. You can't just keep us in a corner. It's like we're hungry.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
we know there's like a smorgasbord of things that we can eat, and we just want to go eat. And I use food as the analogy, but you know what I'm talking about in terms of,
Absolutely. Yeah.
you're sitting there, you're thinking, oh, wow, well, I've had this job, I've had that job, I remember all the problems they had, I don't know why they haven't, digitized this, or, I could see an app that really revolutionizes this industry. And it's like, the founders of Airbnb, neither had a background in hospitality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So by not having a background, they were able to look at, the industry from a different angle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great example. The ones you listed, Musk and Airbnb,
Yeah,
because it
yeah,
really, they really did revolutionize their industries.
yeah. I mean, that's really what some of the greatest successes come from people with a vision and an open mind.
Mhm.
You come in, you look at
Couldn't
something,
agree more.
yeah, you look at something, goes, well, that's pretty inefficient. Like, well, what can we do with this?
Yeah.
And then you start talking to people, and that's where it's important to have an open mind.
Mhm.
Because, you're going to have a lot of ideas being thrown at you by people in your inner circle. Some you like, some you won't like. Some you push back on because it may, it may, provide some anxiety around someone doing something that you should have thought of yourself. That's where the
Right.
ego,
Right.
get in the way.
But I like what you're saying about the fact that you start hearing all these different perspectives and folks bringing all these ideas. And then you as I think effective entrepreneurs hear those things and they start to connect the dots, right? They'll connect a conversation over here with a conversation they had 2 weeks ago, with something they read a week ago, and then bring in their own experience and they connect all these things together. And all of a sudden, the magic starts happening.
Yep. You ever watch or read the story of Netflix?
Yeah. Yep.
It's such a great story. You know, I mean, they literally were really almost out of business. It's like, and they would negotiate with Netflix, not Netflix. I mean, with Blockbuster to buy them,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it fell through. And the fact that,
And you think of how that business has changed over the years, because I can remember getting my CDs in the mail from Netflix, right? And I'd get 3 of them at a time, I think, and I had to watch them within a week, and then I had to return them. And think of today now, we just press a button and we're watching a movie. But in both those cases, we're watching a movie.
yeah,
Nothing's changed.
no, we still watch the movie. Okay, we still got the enjoyment out of it. But some of the most revolutionary ideas come from the commodity that is so important to us, which is time.
Yeah.
Okay. We would go, when my kids were younger, my wife and I, we'd take the kids to Blockbuster and we pick out the weekend movies.
Yeah.
What we're gonna watch, what they're gonna watch. And it was not even pre-DVD. This was, the 8-track or whatever they call the VCR. And it's like,
The big VHS, right? The
yeah,
big.
and the evolution of the DVDs.
As I used to tell my wife, I'd say, well, let's go pick out the movies for the weekend. Here are late fees from last week and enjoy the movie.
Yeah.
Because
It
I
was
never got those back on time.
and then the kids, oh, I want popcorn, I want this, I want, so
Yeah.
you wind up coming home with a bunch of candy,
Yeah. I think
and
of that. I think that's just such a cool example to think about, how movie watching has changed over the years. Right? I mean, you mentioned Netflix and getting them in the mail, but think back to when that never even existed, right? The only way to watch a movie was to go to a movie theater.
you go to a movie theater or wait till the reruns or came to
Eventually,
and
TV.
even that was so rare. Oh, it was,
Now we think of a movie we want to watch and we can be watching it literally 30 seconds later.
but yet I'll go through Netflix with thousands of TV shows and movies. I can't find something I want to watch. So think about how ridiculous that is. Like, yeah, no, it's really
It
not
happens.
anything. It's like,
That
I
happens
can't find
all
anything.
the time. Yep.
It's so frustrating, but it's fun. I mean, this is all the entrepreneurship, I mean, entrepreneurs are inventors
Yeah.
by grade, we
Yeah.
creators, we love to create, we love to, improve upon something. But even, you think about, no one thinks about selling customer service as if it's a product or a service,
Mhm.
but just innovations in customer service is something that has catapulted companies to unbelievable levels, selling the same exact product as somebody else.
Yeah.
Their delivery methods, their return policy, and it's like,
Think about the concept of online check-in.
yeah,
You said it a few minutes ago about how so much of our innovation is around time.
yeah,
I can remember going to get a haircut and I'd sit and wait for 45 minutes.
yep.
Today, I spend that 45 minutes getting stuff done because my phone is telling me, you're up in 30 minutes, you're up in 20 minutes. So I can be efficient and get things done as opposed to sitting at a haircut place reading a magazine that I don't care about.
Look, Uber was all about time savings,
Yeah,
time, convenience, risk,
yeah,
and the taxi and limousine, used to be a taxi driver had to have a medallion that cost like $250,000.
I know.
Today, they're not
I
worth
know.
anything. It's like, but we still have taxis.
So there again, we're just talking about you're getting a ride from one place to another, right? Nothing's changed. I'm still getting in a vehicle and they're taking me to where I want to go, but everything's changed, right? Because now I can do it from my phone. I can pick the car I want to be in. I can pick, the time I want to be picked up. I mean, I have so many options available to me as opposed to trying to flag down a cab.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I actually, I enjoy it now. They have Uber Eats, so that was the next level of,
Right.
and
Yep.
it's so ridiculous because there are people that, they're in the mood for some food, and literally they'll get a $10 item that costs 35 with the uptick in costs from Uber plus tipping, and it's like, really? You wanted a
Yeah.
cup of coffee and a donut, and you just spent $35. I mean, it's insane, but convenience, the
Convenience. Yes.
time
Yeah.
that person may have been sitting, on a phone call, a conference for the next hour, and was starving, and says, I
Right.
have no coffee in the house, I have no food, I need some, I got to get something. Maybe
Yeah.
it's a donut, maybe it's a sandwich. But again, time is money. Okay,
Yep.
how do you monetize your time as best possible? So,
Well, there's customers out there, like you just said, Keith, they have time or they have money, but they don't have time. So that's really what they're buying. They have the resources to be able to, basically buy time. Right?
yeah, and think about, even as a coach, when you go in and you talk to a client and you start evaluating their business. Remember the guy we spoke to? His biggest problem is time management.
Yes, I hear that a lot. I hear
Yeah,
that a lot from business owners. Yeah,
yeah,
that's as big an issue for business owners as the business owner who says, I'm just not making enough money. I talk to a lot of clients and prospective clients who say, I'm satisfied with the amount of money I'm making and how we're growing, but I'm chained to my desk and my phone and my computer, 6, 7 days a week. And they're missing out on family, friends. They don't have any time for themselves. That is a big, big thing for business owners. We could have a whole separate discussion on that.
absolutely. So, what's your big takeaway from the concept of new entrepreneurs versus we'll call them, to some extent, experienced entrepreneurs, which includes some failures?
Yeah, and I don't think either. I know in my case, Keith, I'm not talking about taking experience and throwing it out the window. I'm not saying that at all. Experience is valuable. However, I think as an entrepreneur, coming in with open eyes, open perspectives, a fresh perspective, being open to hearing things that might challenge your way of thinking, and not just cutting that off and saying, oh, that's not right, but listening to that, hearing that, understanding it, and really giving it time to sink in and think about that comment might change how I look at my business.
Mhm.
So I really think being open-minded, and certainly if you are an entrepreneur who doesn't have experience in an area, you almost have to be open-minded. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think a business owner should be afraid if they don't have experience in a particular business, not to pursue it.
Fear is one of the reasons that a lot of people don't take the leap, is that
Right.
they're afraid of failure. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
what it's down to. It's like,
Yeah. What's your takeaway?
Well, my takeaway is, of course, I have so much more history to look back on of what it was like to be, an early entrepreneur. And
Mhm.
I mean, I wasn't risk averse. To me, I loved risk. It was like, for me, it was very exciting. I wish I had a little more fear. Okay, but certainly, uh, I don't know that I would change much about, entrepreneurship. I really was very open-minded from a creative perspective, but not as open-minded as I probably should have been about surrounding myself with people that could have been very helpful in avoiding some of the pitfalls. But that's entrepreneurship. I mean, that's the whole thing in a nutshell. There is no magic formula. There's no blueprint. You just go. It's like, that's it. It's like you're on the top of the mountain, you're looking down this water. Wow, that's far. All right, am I going to take the sleep or not? What's down there? No, I'm just going to go. I'm just going to do it. And that's pretty much how I lived as an entrepreneur.
That's good. That's good. I like that perspective.
Yes. So another week gone, and really gone. Tomorrow's Friday already.
I know, but that was a good discussion. That was a good
No,
thought.
it was good. The goal for us is to always put out information to either beginners in the entrepreneurship world or people who have already been there, have had some experience, and want to expand upon their network and their knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, I hope we're giving folks who take the time to listen to us. I hope we're getting through to them and getting them to think differently about their business, about entrepreneurship, and hopefully we're giving them a perspective they're not already bringing to the table.
I think we are, and I'll leave it at that. All right, Greg, listen, it's been a
Thank you.
pleasure. I'll see you next week.
Tuesday.
Tuesday. Yes, 5 days. Thanks, man.